Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and live stream. I'm Jessie Lezak, fractional CMO at BDEX, along with David Finkelstein, BDEX's founder and CEO. What's new, David?
Hey, Jesse. All good here. Just about the end of the month already. It's crazy how fast January's gone. Everyone's out there in a freeze.
Yes, definitely.
Luckily, we're gonna get close. We're gonna be just over freezing this weekend, so it's kind of crazy.
I was going to say, you actually have like a sweater on this time. It's not like, Florida t-shirt weather.
Yeah, it's cold in my house.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, the kids have been home 4 days in a row here just because the
Wow.
temperatures are so cold outside. I
Wow.
know. Yes, interesting times. But, good thing we can warm up with some awesome conversation about data and education this time. So, today we've got another really great episode planned, and we're thrilled to welcome on Kathryn Wifvat, CEO of Nuubi and a data science professor. Welcome to the show, Kat.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on the show, Kat, especially because education is actually not a topic that we cover a lot. A lot of times we're talking about, marketing and advertising, ad tech, martech, all this kind of stuff. We've talked about, inventory management, all kinds of data topics, because that's what we do. But education's one that we don't cover a lot. So I'm excited about this. It'll be interesting, and I'll have an opportunity to learn something from you as well. We'd love for you to kick it off for us. Why don't you give our viewers and listeners a little bit of a background about yourself, and what led you to become founder and CEO of Nuubi?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was always really passionate about problem solving, and that is what led me to study math and statistics and get my PhD in applied math. And I remember way back taking my first class in machine learning, and people were like, "What is machine learning?" It's kind of a backbone of these AI models, and the software would take hours to run. But I was always passionate about that technology. But then during my PhD, I started instructing, teaching, now being a adjunct professor at multiple different universities, teaching online. My problem solving brain started looking at how a lot of students just really need extra support and really work on things outside of class time. And it's like, how can we use technology to bridge that gap, help students get the support they need? Across the US, almost 40% of students actually never end up graduating, and a third of those are because they had some academic questions that they just couldn't get answered in time and felt like they were falling behind. So that is what led me to founding Nuubi, is how can we use technology to help with that gap?
That's awesome. I love that journey. I love the doing machine learning early on and having it take hours to compute. Definitely been there, done that. And it's amazing to see what we can do today in the speed that we can do it, right? And so let's jump right into the first topic, AI in education as a pipeline. So help us understand what you're doing today with AI in education.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to AI in education, there are so many different areas that the AI touches. And a lot of students that I teach are master's students that are learning data science to re-enter the workforce and really make use of all of this new data capabilities. And so the workforce itself is looking for that. It's looking for people who can use AI to be, ready to jump in. And where my app Nuubi comes in is it uses AI to help answer questions. So a lot of help forums, they go unused, even though questions really, are very constant with students. They have a lot of questions. They, email me all the time, but they're not talking to each other so much. They feel shy. So having AI that's able to help them when they're working on things late at night, this helps them get the skills that they need to enter the workforce and basically keep going with their programs. But then at another level of looking at the AI with the workforce, I'm always looking at student work as well. So if it looks like it's been copied and pasted straight from an AI tool, I do bring up the conversation with them and say, hey, this is, good that you use AI tools, but if you just are copying and pasting, an employer is going to notice that. And that's not what they're looking for with the applicant. They want someone who can come in, know the knowledge, and be very effective using AI, but not just copied and pasting with no critical thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we hear a lot about students using AI and doing, you know, things like, you know, having AI write papers for them. I mean, geez, I mentioned in the green room before, I mean, this is not just an education thing. This is not just kids. I mean, we have, there was an article that was going around LinkedIn for a while with a screenshot of a newspaper where somebody had literally pasted in a newspaper an article clearly that came from AI, because at the end it said, you know, please let me know if you would like me to, you know, cite the sources. I can do that, you know, as well, or something like that. And so like it was very obvious that this person didn't write the article. They had AI write the article and they didn't even proofread it themselves. So like this is a common, you know, situation across the board. I'm curious though, like when you're talking about like your AI answering students' questions and things like that. Help me out. Like what kind of questions, you know, obviously a student's up late at night, trying to write a paper or trying to work on a project. And like historically in a situation, you would have to, you know, they'd have to struggle with it, or, you know, try to find a friend that's still up at 2 a.m. working on it as well, or wait till the next day and try to, you know, talk to the teacher about it, the professor. So what is Nuubi doing to sort of solve that problem for them so that they can get their questions answered in more real time?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was first thinking about how do we solve this problem, I looked at the current solutions and I thought, you know, a lot of these online classes, we have a Q&A forum and students just don't use it. They only do what is required when it comes to discussions, but they never actually use these forums to ask for help. So in coming up with Nuubi, I basically try to address all of the common issues, which is students are too shy to ask for help. The teacher doesn't get notified until they get an email anyway. The students who are doing well, they don't have any incentive to help. And so it just turns into the system where nobody uses it. So Nuubi at its core, it is a group Q&A forum. So students can see other people's questions and answers, but there is an AI teaching assistant that lives inside of that Q&A forum, and it provides a first level answer to every question. We can connect, it is optional for the instructor, but we can connect with course materials and make the answer better. And so I tell my students, post here, I will get notified of it immediately. So I'm aware that you had the question. You get an immediate response that is, you know, better than some other chat tool. And then other students who jump in, they all actually get rewarded for leadership and communication points. So this is something else that the AITA encourages and promotes is, hey, you're actually communicating with your fellow classmates and helping them. That's something that recruiters want to see. The leadership, communication, and teamwork skills are some of the most common things that recruiters say they have trouble finding. So it's basically using AI in these ways to fill the gaps, but still having that kind of community where I can then come in as a professor and still say, hey, everybody's on the right track, and people feel that human connection, but there's the AI coming in, doing that sort of reward system and answering when I'm not looking at my email.
Cool. So you use the term AITA, so it's like a teaching assistant, but it's an AI form.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so the goal in the roadmap is to have it grow into an agentic system. And this is something that everybody's talking right now is agentic AI, having the AI being able to act as its own sort of agent, and a lot of times as an assistant where it's not just generating text, it is able to audit and make decisions.
That's very cool.
And that sort of leads into the next topic, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
Agentic AI Tutors. So could you tell us about Agentic AI Tutors? Like, what could we expect from that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is an area of AI that I'm really excited about because I think when people think of AI, they mostly just think of these generative tools that generate text or generate images. And a lot of those tools we've noticed, we've come up with this word for it, hallucinating. Those tools, they're not 100% accurate all the time. They were not built to solve mathematical problems necessarily. And so we've realized that those generative tools, they might tell us an answer. It might sound like what we want to hear, but it might not be right. So now the question is, how do we build on those systems to have a layer that's auditing what's going on, fact checking, and then making decisions? So, for example, if there is a student that hasn't checked in, or maybe it asked a question and didn't get an answer, the AI could, of course, provide a base level answer, but then also send an email or loop in the student's support advisor or ping the instructor or give a report to the instructor and say, hey, these are some topics that people are really struggling with and need extra help with. Here's some students that need some extra support. So being able to actually take some actions beyond just generating text in order to help alleviate some of the workload for the faculty and students.
So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I wish I had an AI tutor when I was in school.
I know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just wondering, do I wish I did, or do I'm kind of glad I got through school before ChatGPT at least came out. But I don't know, the Agentic AI tutor would be really cool.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I don't know. We got here, David tuning in from El Salvador.
Oh, cool.
Curious what people in the chat think about all this. Are you glad you got through school before AI, or you had an agentic AI tutor? But what else could an agentic AI tutor do? I mean, would it start to notice whether the student is falling behind or not, and like give any sort of like alerts, or how does it like help guide the like educational journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one way that we are incorporating into the roadmap is we have this, when we have information about who is participating, who's asking questions, we can also connect and see, what students are falling behind. And right now, the way it's set up, as someone who's taught like thousands of students, is there is analytics in a lot of these learning management systems, but it's kind of hard to dig through and really see, what's important. And so what happens with me personally, and I think most professors, is it's time to grade. Grading has to be done within a week of when it's turned in. I try to grade as soon as possible. Some people might grade, a week later. So by that point, once you do the grading, then you notice, okay, there's some students who didn't turn in the work. Now, this is a serious problem for the student because things really snowball. So the student at that point hasn't turned in the work, and it's been a whole week since then. What happened? Do they need extra help? And so with agentic AI, if there's a way of figuring out before the student hasn't, turned in the work, maybe we can look at the analytics and say, okay, they never actually looked at the page where, the assignment was due. Can we send them information about, student support services and be a little bit proactive? I've found that a lot of times when this has happened with students, there's some kind of situation in their life or, family. And this is where they can just feel really overwhelmed and could use that extra support. And kind of touching on what you were mentioning earlier, I got through, many years of school without an agentic AI tutor. But I really look back and say, that was at a time when pretty much everything was in person. And I had so many, study groups and peers and teaching assistants where I could go to their office hours, go to the library. And I think what we see now is so many more students are online, so many more classes are online, and people aren't quite feeling that sense of community so much. And so that's where it's like, how can we, use technology to at least have something to help people?
Help people stay connected.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, there's definitely a lot more people that are taking classes online. And because of that, I think it'd be a lot more helpful in sort of integrating the students and giving them, access to peer groups and feedback and things like that would be more difficult to get if you're not actually in the classroom every day.
Definitely. Yeah, maybe the agentic AI tutor would pick up things that even humans couldn't pick up on. But we have a couple of questions before we move on to the next topic. So, Kat, in what ways do your agentic AI tutors align to personal learning styles and educational needs? I mean, I know I'm more of a visual learner. I like to see things. So, like, would agentic AI pick up on that?
Yeah, so that is definitely something that's in the pipeline. One thing that I will say across the board with agentic AI is that everyone's talking about it and people are starting to implement it. And right now, day to day, what that looks like in today's kind of technology is automated workflows. But what's exciting is how we can build on that. So right now, all of the students do get a certain answer, based on course materials. And it's not yet identifying different learning styles or paying attention to that. And then with the analytics, we're at the early stages of being able to find those patterns and surface those and say, okay, who are the students that they've sort of dropped off a little bit, they haven't been participating, or students that are doing well. And then there's some students that we found actually that are participating a lot, but are at risk of burnout. And so we might not think they need support because they're participating, but they actually also do need extra support. So we are at those early stages. And what is exciting is that when we are able to collect this data, we will over time be able to personalize and be able to log, okay, now we have a little bit more information about the student. How can we present the information in a way that makes sense to them? And also know, is this someone who's at risk of burnout, or is this someone who needs, a little bit of extra information, and go from there?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of some of the work that we've done on the advertising marketing side, just sort of building personality profiles of people. Mm-hmm. And so like with all of the data that you'd be gaining about like the types of questions that people are asking and how they approach those questions and how they approach, tackling projects and things like that. I would think that you'd be able to build sort of a personality profile that would get an understanding of how to teach to that individual, because everybody, like we just said, everybody learns differently, being whether you're visual or someone that is memorizes really well or whatever. But I would think that that'd be another interesting sort of way that you can kind of improve how the agentic AI handles each individual's, questions and things differently, provides answers that are catered to them based on those personalities.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do see that pretty much all classes will have a discussion board where it's an introduction. And so students will mention, hey, these are my interests, this is my workplace, these are my goals. And the AI, if it can, take that information and, strip away the student's name. And, we can get into that a little bit, more in a bit, I think, of, how do you make sure that the data is private? But being able to say, okay, this person fits a certain persona, or how can I explain it in a way that makes sense to them? And that's where it's not like we're trying to replace teachers. The teacher still has a really important role, and students still want that, guidance. But the AI can basically do what isn't humanly possible for the instructor to do. So for myself, when I want to personalize things, I have to go back and look at those notes and remember things, or, certain students I remember because they're participating more, but the AI will have perfect memory and be able to personalize everything eventually.
Yeah. I love that AI has perfect memory. It's like hard to
but it hallucinates.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's where it needs that extra auditing and fact checking to take care of the hallucination. And I found too, a lot of students, I asked them, they would come to office hours and ask me questions, and I would just kind of out of curiosity, I said, have you asked ChatGPT any of these questions? And they do say, we want to know for sure from the professor if we are on the right track. And that does make sense, because I have had some students turn things in where I thought, wait a minute, why did this big chunk of students answer something a completely different way than what the textbook said? Put the prompt, the homework problem into ChatGPT, and it gave me, something different than what the textbook said, and it was what those other students put. So because of those hallucinations, I think students are now learning that the AI, it's a tool, but when they really want to know if it's right, they still want, help from the professor or a human.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Claude, but I have to say Claude messed up today. Like I had it write a letter for me, and it put, it formatted it for me, so it put from and put my name, and it had my last name wrong, which I thought was like crazy because I've been using Claude for, I don't know, 6 months or whatever, and it's never done that before. It knows my name, and it chose a random last name that I'd never even heard of before. I'm like, how did this happen? It did such a good job with the rest of the letter, but like messed up with the most simple thing.
Yeah.
Come on, Claude. What's the issue? Well, before we get into the next topic, we got a few questions here from David, so I'll just read them all off, and we can all see if we have any answers for them. But he says, I look forward to having kids someday that will have personalized agentic tutors. Oh, there's that. How will this impact the traditional university roadmap for kids in the States? What role does data personalization play in the feedback loop for retraining? And how does the agentic tutor support data science storytelling and bringing the human component back into the classroom?
Cool. Okay. I might have to go one at a time on these. Could you remind me the first question? Okay. So traditional university roadmap. So one thing that I think is interesting is AI is really advancing so rapidly, and technology in general, that I think what we are going to see, and there's some trends that say this, is that there's going to be a rise in micro credentials and having a living sort of document as your resume, as your portfolio. And it's a little bit gone are the days of just you go to school, you get a 4-year degree, and then you work the same job for decades. And so with the US in education, with that sort of traditional university roadmap, having that type of curriculum and peer groups are really important. And studies show that it is very helpful to still go through that system. But we are rapidly seeing a lot of curriculum changes that are really embracing AI and really helping students be prepared for an AI-ready workplace. But a lot of people are going to be taking smaller classes to do upskilling. So we're going to see a lot more upskilling and a lot more reskilling outside of that traditional education system.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, more like LinkedIn learning. Yeah, all of that stuff.
What about the role data personalization plays in the feedback loop for retraining?
Okay, so this is a really interesting question, especially with education. So pretty much across the board, everyone involved in any universities, they are going to say, we don't care even if you strip any identifying information from the student. We don't want anything that the student put in to be used for retraining. So they really want the data to already have been trained, somewhere else or on people who volunteer for that. But they do want the models to not be retrained using any student data. And so it would have to live where the student information would have to be basically anonymized. And with Nuubi, for example, we give our own Nuubi ID to each student. And so there's no identifying information associated with them that we can see. But for an instructor that needs to know who is falling behind or who has the most questions, that ID that we have gets merged and associated with the student on their end, so they can see it for the purposes of using the tool. But information about that student, it would have to be stored somewhere anonymously. And then anything that engages with the AI, nobody wants it used for retraining. They just want it, closed loop, just once again, as a further way of protecting the student privacy.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that sort of led us into topic 3, right?
Sure does.
Anonymized learning. I think you covered a lot about that, and I think it makes a lot of sense. But I also think that, there's sort of two types of training, right? There's training the AI on the topics and how to answer the questions. But isn't there also sort of another level, kind of like what we were talking about, where the AI can sort of learn about the individual, and so that information, the questions they ask, how they ask those questions, and things like that could be really interesting in learning how that student learns, and how best to approach a problem for that individual student, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where it'll be interesting to see over time how much people want to let the AI know certain things that will make the experience better for them. And certain things, as I mentioned, are still in the roadmap and we don't have right now. But I think the optimal solution will be having like an opt-in or opt-out process. So kind of like now certain websites, they say, hey, would you like us to, track cookies and get to know you so that you can get more personalized ads? Or if you say no, you'll still see ads. They just, won't be as relevant to you. And then people can make the decision. So right now with Nuubi, we do focus on that, where if we are going to have the AI be better suited to the class, somebody has the option of saying, okay, yes, you can look at my course materials. Most people do want to do that, but there's a couple people who say, no, that's my course material. And I just, even if I know you're not going to, train the model on it, it'll just be used for this class. They just don't want that used. So there can be some information that we can say, hey, we're just going to grab, information from the sort of student database, for example. So a student with the ID 123, they put in their introduction that they care about sports. And so anytime I answer something, I say, okay, this is coming from student 123, try to make it about sports. So in that sense, it's basically able to just generate text where it's grabbing information, but it's not saving any kind of new information or storing any kind of new information. Learning how to change its responses in the way it responds over time, that would involve some of that retraining versus just taking data that's already available, but the model itself isn't changing. It's sort of just changing how it responds.
Yeah, that's great. Being able to communicate with individuals in a way that, they understand is really important.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. And it definitely makes a difference to the students to make things relevant to them.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Would have with me. I wasn't the best student.
I
Yeah.
can't imagine.
Yeah, I know as someone who studied math and learned math my whole life, I was lucky that I was one of those people that just loved problem solving. But the number one question people ask during math class, it's why do I need to know this?
Yeah.
And why am I memorizing this? And I think that sort of why, being able to have those answers is going to be so helpful, because once again, I know as a professor, it's sort of, we all say, we'll do things differently. And then you're busy, you're teaching, you have so many questions, and it's hard to provide that level of, answer to everybody. And so I think that's where it'll really help kind of provide that extra, guidance and extra context.
Definitely. Well, anything else on anonymized learning, data enrichment before we move on to tech stack?
Yeah, I would say I think I hit mostly the main points, which are that, there is certain things in student data that are completely protected. And so that does have to be the number one thing that is protected. So basically any kind of identifiable information and anything, for example, like financial aid type of information, which is not something that, a tutor needs to know. So being able to, anonymize anything identifiable and only send information about, hey, this is this person's interest, or this is their learning style. And this is the question that they have. This is the course that they're taking. And then having a model that has already been developed, and now it's just able to put those pieces together. Those are the main thing. And I think over time, once again, we'll see as we see more of this AI that can do more, we'll start seeing more of those kind of pop-ups that we see with certain ads where it says, hey, do you want this to be personalized or not? So people will be able to opt in and out of different levels beyond that.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing on that. One last topic that we ask all of the guests who come on Deconstructing Data is, what are some of your favorite tools in your tech stack? And I'm curious to hear that from you too. Like, we hear all sorts of tools, but I'm sure maybe we'll hear some new ones from you.
Yeah, I'd love to know about yours as well. So, one that I will mention that I haven't heard talked about as much, it's called Perplexity. So, it's basically they have their own generative AI tool that is kind of at a surface, it looks similar to ChatGPT or Gemini, but what it does is when you ask it a prompt, it will actually do some calculations and decide what tool is actually best for that prompt. So it might send it to one of those different LLMs. And they came out with their own browser that has its own agents built in. So I haven't actually explored it too much yet, but sometimes it's happened to me in Perplexity. I'll say, hey, write this email for me. And it'll say, okay, we're trying to connect to your Gmail. Can you log into your Gmail? Because we're going to write the email in Gmail so that you can send it right there. So it's actually kind of going a step further, and you can kind of play around with some of these assistants in that, in their own browser and in their own sort of AI.
Totally.
Yeah, Perplexity is cool, and they just keep coming out with more and more things. And I don't know if you've heard their podcast. They actually have a podcast.
Oh, cool.
And it's pretty neat. It's a completely AI podcast. It's has 2 voices, and it's basically like takes current events each day, takes like, it's about 10 minutes. It's not very long, but it's like 10 minutes, and it summarizes like what happened in the last 24 hours in current news. And they chat back and forth, and it's completely AI. It's pretty neat. So yeah, Perplexity has done some pretty neat stuff, and they keep advancing. I haven't tried the browser yet either, but I also use Perplexity as well as Claude, and those are really my 2 main ones that I use. But for data analysis, I use Julius AI, which is pretty cool. It does a really good job with data analysis.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I would agree with those. And I think we've all kind of started seeing certain things are better for different, outcomes that we want. I love Claude for programming. I remember way back in the day, I tried using ChatGPT for programming and basically fed it some front end code. And I said, hey, can you just make this button bigger and center the text? And I copy and paste the code back into my, simulator where I could see what it looks like. I said, ChatGPT, why did you change the button from blue to orange? It didn't ask you to do that. And of course, oh yeah, I'm so sorry. Let me try again. And it basically was like all downhill from there. So yeah, basically, yeah, I learned quickly. Yeah, Claude and different things are going to be different for those different kind of goals that we have.
I'm curious, as a professor, what do you think are some of the most common tools you're seeing some of the students use now?
Yeah, I would say the number one is definitely ChatGPT. I think that's probably the most common ones that students use, to the point where at one university I teach at, there is a structure for writing reports based on labs. And we have a template that says, hey, here's a report template, just fill in your information here. And I know from experience that ChatGPT, if you ask it to write a document for you, it'll have one formatted in a certain way. And I've had more and more students turn things in with that format. And it puts me in a little bit of an awkward situation where, I understand that we should all use certain tools to be more effective. And maybe they did do the whole lab and they just asked, ChatGPT to fine tune their write-up. But I think there are more places coming out with ways to identify whether or not those tools were used and to what extent, because as mentioned, we want to tell people, yes, you should use these and be more productive and be more effective, but if they are just copying and pasting, then that is not going to be good for anybody, especially them as they're entering the workforce.
Yeah, definitely. So interesting.
Yeah.
Have you used on Claude? Have you used Cowork yet? I haven't used that yet.
I haven't tried it yet. I keep thinking about it, and it is interesting. It's like there's some level of control I'm like scared to give up still, even though I know it'll be so much more effective. I think with code and with writing, it's always tricky to correct things that you didn't write or that you didn't really, think about ahead of time. It can be sort of more difficult to go back and look at it, but I know it's one of those things, and I'm sure the next generations, they'll be used to it, and it's going to just unlock this whole new level.
Yeah.
Wow. So cool. Well, thank you for sharing all of that with us, Kat. It's been awesome having you on. But in closing, would you like to let listeners know how they could find you and Nuubi?
Yeah, of course. So I would say LinkedIn is probably the number one place to find me, and I'm very responsive on messages there. Otherwise, we do have Nuubi.com if you want to visit Nuubi.com and check it out. We are always coming up with, more exciting things that are making the AI, more and more agentic, which is really exciting. But LinkedIn is probably the number one place to reach me.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kat. This has been a great conversation. I'm really glad you joined us today on the podcast, and appreciate you taking the time to speak with us.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm always excited to talk about these topics. So it was a great time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, I'll go ahead and close us out with a brief message from our partners at Rigor, as well as our outro video. But until next week, I hope everyone has a great week. Happy Thursday. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks.
Hey there. I'm Alora Weaver, the host of Writer's podcast, Humans of AI. We take you behind the algorithms and into the real stories of leaders building AI responsibly, from leading AI scientists to healthcare physicians preserving the human touch to retail innovators personalizing at scale. If you're navigating this rapidly changing world of agentic AI, this is a chance to hear how others are doing it too. Find Humans of AI presented by Writer wherever you listen to podcasts.
So audience members, we want to invite you to get powered by BDEX. Build authentic connections with your audience and drive unprecedented engagement. So just imagine harnessing the power of AI to craft your audiences that truly resonate with your brand, ensuring that your marketing is hitting the mark every time. We want to bring you closer to those marketing goals, and we're eager to guide you. So just visit bdex.com. You can click on the Talk to an Expert button and get powered by BDEX. Deconstructing Data is the show that makes data make sense. Every Thursday, David Finkelstein and myself, Jesse Lezak, sit down with industry experts to unpack how data really drives marketing. We do this in plain language anyone can understand. If you want real insights, real conversations, and zero jargon, tune into Deconstructing Data live on LinkedIn every Thursday at 4:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Go, 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 go.